High in the majestic mountains of Tibet, a lineage of spiritual leaders has guided their people for centuries, embodying wisdom, compassion, and service. Known as the Dalai Lamas, each reincarnation carries forward the lessons, virtues, and mission of those who came before. From humble beginnings in remote villages to becoming global symbols of peace and enlightenment, their lives weave a tapestry of devotion, courage, and humanity. This story journeys through the lives of all 14 Dalai Lamas, revealing how one soul, reborn time and again, has inspired generations with love, wisdom, and the enduring light of compassion. The first Dalai Lama, Gedun Drub, 1391–1474. The sun had just begun to rise over the snow-capped peaks of Tibet, spilling golden light across the valleys. In the small village of Shabkar, a child was born who would later be revered as the first Dalai Lama, Gedun Drub. From the moment he opened his eyes, the villagers noticed something extraordinary. The baby's gaze was unusually calm, almost as if he had seen lifetimes before. His parents, humble farmers, whispered in awe, "This child is different. He carries a light within him." At the age of 7, Gedun Drub was sent to study under the great master Tsongkhapa, founder of the Gelug school of Tibetan Buddhism. During his very first lesson, the boy surprised the master. "Child, can you recite the first sutra?" Tsongkhapa asked. Gedun Drub paused, his little brow furrowed in concentration. "Master," he said softly, "what is the purpose of memorizing words if one cannot live their meaning?" The monks gasped. Even Tsongkhapa smiled, realizing that this boy's wisdom was far beyond his years. From that day, Gedun Drub dedicated himself not only to study, but to understanding the deeper essence of the teachings. By his teenage years, he had memorized vast scriptures, mastered meditation practices, and excelled in philosophical debate. Yet despite his brilliance, he remained humble. He would often leave the monastery to help villagers, repairing homes, carrying medicine to the sick, and teaching children simple chants and prayers. One particularly harsh winter, news arrived of pilgrims trapped on a mountain path during a blizzard. Gedun Drub, hearing their cries, gathered supplies and began the perilous climb. For 3 days and nights he meditated under a cliff, channeling prayers to guide them safely down. When the storm cleared, the pilgrims were unharmed. Villagers whispered that he had calmed the forces of nature through his unwavering concentration and compassion. Though he never held the title Dalai Lama during his lifetime, Gedun Drub's life became the spiritual blueprint for the lineage. He taught that wisdom must always be paired with compassion, and that true leadership is measured by service to others. The second Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso, 1475–1542. Years later, in a quiet valley, a boy named Gedun Gyatso was born. The villagers and monks immediately noticed signs that he was extraordinary. His calm demeanor, thoughtful gaze, and unusual awareness seemed to hint at a soul that had returned with purpose. Monks performed divinations, and visions confirmed what many suspected. He was the reincarnation of Gedun Drub. Even as a child, Gedun Gyatso displayed remarkable intellect and empathy. During one harsh winter, a famine struck a remote valley. The boy, barely 10, insisted on helping. With a few trusted monks, he walked for days through snow-covered paths, delivering food, blankets, and prayers to the starving villagers. One elder remembered how the boy knelt beside a frightened child and whispered, "Do not worry, the light inside you is never lost. Stay calm and it will guide you." As he grew, Gedun Gyatso became a scholar and a teacher. He traveled across Tibet, teaching the principles of meditation, compassion, and ethical living. During one visit to a distant village, he encountered a shepherd who had lost his flock. Instead of scolding or giving money, Gedun Gyatso taught him a meditation on patience and awareness. The shepherd later found his flock miraculously safe. Villagers said it was the boy's blessing that guided them. Gedun Gyatso also focused on building monasteries, mentoring monks, and spreading the Gelug tradition. He emphasized that knowledge alone is not enough. Spiritual insight must be expressed through action, compassion, and service to humanity. His life solidified the idea that the Dalai Lama is not just a spiritual teacher, but a living example of wisdom applied to daily life. The third Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso, 1543–1588. The wind carried the scent of pine and snow across the Tibetan plateau when Tenzin Gyatso was born. From his earliest days, villagers and monks noticed an unusual calm and intelligence in the boy. He seemed to understand not only the teachings of the monastery but the hearts of those around him. By the age of 7, he could recite complex prayers and philosophical ideas that even older monks struggled to comprehend. As he grew, Tenzin Gyatso became renowned not only for his intellect but for his warmth and compassion. He spent hours teaching meditation to children, tending to the sick, and offering guidance to travelers who had lost their way in the mountains. One elder recounted, He could see the suffering within a person and ease it with just his presence, a word, or a gentle smile. During this time, Tibet was increasingly interacting with Mongolia. The Mongol ruler Altan Khan sought spiritual guidance and invited Sonam Gyatso to his court. The journey was long and perilous, crossing vast plains and rugged mountains, but the young monk traveled undeterred, accompanied by a small group of disciples. When Sonam Gyatso arrived, Altan Khan asked him, "Can your teachings help my people live in peace and wisdom?" Sonam Gyatso responded with calm confidence. "True peace begins in the heart. If one cultivates compassion, humility, and understanding, then nations like individuals can flourish." Altan Khan was deeply moved. He saw in Sonam Gyatso not just a monk but a wise leader whose spiritual authority could unify people. He conferred upon him the title Dalai Lama, meaning ocean teacher, signifying the depth of wisdom the young monk possessed. This marked the first time the title was officially used, establishing a legacy that continues to this day. Sonam Gyatso spent years in Mongolia, teaching, establishing monasteries, and guiding both rulers and commoners in spiritual practice. One legendary tale tells of a Mongol warrior who, angered during a debate, drew his sword against Sonam Gyatso. The young Dalai Lama did not flinch. Instead, he calmly spoke of the futility of anger and the power of compassion. The warrior, moved by his words, lowered the sword and later became one of his most devoted followers. Through his travels and teachings, Sonam Gyatso demonstrated that spiritual authority is not imposed by force or fear, but earned through wisdom, moral integrity, and the ability to guide hearts. His life established a new era for the Dalai Lama lineage, one that combined spiritual depth with diplomatic and cultural influence, setting a precedent for the leaders who would follow him. The fourth Dalai Lama, Gedun Gyatso, 1589–1617. High on the windswept steppes of Mongolia, a boy was born into a noble family. He was named Gedun Gyatso, and from the very beginning his parents noticed an unusual serenity in him. Even as a toddler, he spent hours quietly observing the world, often meditating as if he understood something beyond his age. When Tibetan monks arrived to identify the reincarnation of Sonam Gyatso, the third Dalai Lama, the signs were clear. Through visions and careful examination, they confirmed that Gedun Gyatso was indeed the fourth Dalai Lama. Though foreign-born, he was welcomed by Tibetans, who recognized that spiritual destiny transcends borders. As a child, Gedun Gyatso was trained in the Gelug teachings, memorizing scriptures, mastering rituals, and learning to meditate deeply. Yet he also had a profound connection with nature. He would often wander alone into the mountains, listening to the rustle of trees, the flow of rivers, and the songs of birds, contemplating the impermanence of life and the interconnectedness of all beings. When he reached adolescence, Gedun Gyatso traveled to Tibet to assume his role formally. The journey was arduous, crossing mountains, rivers, and harsh terrain, but he walked with quiet determination, often stopping to bless villagers along the way. One evening, a storm struck a small monastery near a cliff. The monks feared the building would collapse. Gedun Gyatso led a meditation, chanting prayers through the night. By morning, the storm had passed and the monastery remained intact. Many villagers believed it was his spiritual power that had calmed the tempest. During his reign, Gedun Gyatso focused on uniting spiritual traditions between Mongolia and Tibet. He encouraged monasteries to teach both compassion and wisdom, fostering harmony among students from different regions. He also emphasized humility and service. Stories tell of him kneeling beside farmers to bless their fields and helping rebuild homes damaged by winter storms. Though his life was short, he passed away at the age of 28. Gedun Gyatso's legacy was profound. He demonstrated that leadership is not about origin, wealth, or power, but about humility, service, and the cultivation of wisdom. The fourth Dalai Lama showed Tibet and Mongolia that spiritual authority transcends borders, connecting hearts and cultures through compassion and understanding. The fifth Dalai Lama, Ngawang Lobsang Gyatso, 1617–1682. The early morning sun cast long shadows over Lhasa as a boy named Ngawang Lobsang Gyatso was born in the village of Changjai. From the start, it was clear that this child was extraordinary. Even as a toddler, he displayed a rare combination of intelligence, humility, and spiritual insight. Monks often observed him sitting quietly in meditation for hours, eyes half closed, as if communing with the heavens. As he grew, Tibet was a land of fragmented political powers. Regional lords ruled independently, often in conflict. Ngawang Lobsang Gyatso understood that his role was not just spiritual but also to guide the people toward unity and peace. He studied scriptures diligently, trained in meditation, mastered rituals, and developed diplomatic skills beyond his years. At the age of 25, with the support of the Mongol ruler Gushi Khan, he established the Ganden Phodrang government, unifying Tibet under a single spiritual and political authority. This marked the first time the Dalai Lama held both religious and temporal power. Monks and nobles alike were awed by his ability to navigate complex politics while maintaining deep spiritual integrity. One of his most enduring legacies was the construction of the Potala Palace, perched majestically above the city of Lhasa. Legend has it that Ngawang Lobsang Gyatso had a vision of a golden palace glowing in the sunlight, a palace that would house spiritual teachings, monks, and serve as a symbol of Tibetan unity. Thousands of workers, artisans, and monks labored for years to bring this vision to life. Even amidst the immense task, Ngawang Lobsang Gyatso often worked alongside them, blessing their efforts and ensuring every stone was laid with care and purpose. Ngawang Lobsang Gyatso's reign was marked by both scholarship and compassion. He traveled extensively, resolving disputes between monasteries, mediating conflicts among nobles, and offering guidance to common villagers. One story tells of a snowstorm trapping travelers in the mountains. Ngawang Lobsang Gyatso personally led a rescue, offering prayers, blankets, and food. Villagers recalled that his serene presence eased fear and inspired courage, reinforcing the idea that spiritual authority is inseparable from compassionate action. He also wrote extensively, creating philosophical works, historical accounts, and guidance for both rulers and monks. His teachings emphasized that wisdom must be applied in daily life, that leadership is service, and that compassion is the foundation of governance. By the end of his life, Ngawang Lobsang Gyatso had not only unified Tibet politically, but also strengthened its spiritual heart. The 5th Dalai Lama became a symbol of what a Dalai Lama could embody: a sage, a unifier, a compassionate leader, and a visionary whose influence would resonate for centuries. The 6th Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso, 1683–1706. The quiet valleys of Tibet were alive with whispers when a child named Tenzin Gyatso was born. From early childhood, he displayed a temperament unlike his predecessors. While he was deeply spiritual, he was also drawn to the beauty of the world, the songs of birds, the laughter of villagers, and the warmth of human connection. Recognized as the reincarnation of the 5th Dalai Lama, he was enthroned at a young age and trained in the Gelug school. He learned scripture, debate, ritual, and meditation, yet Tenzin Gyatso often resisted strict monastic discipline. Instead, he was drawn to poetry and song, finding in them a medium to express the joys, sorrows, and complexities of human life. By adolescence, he was composing poems that spoke of love, longing, and the impermanence of life. His verses spread among the people, resonating deeply with the common folk who saw in him a Dalai Lama who was both divine and profoundly human. One poem described the fleeting beauty of a mountain flower, reflecting his meditation on impermanence, a concept that touched both monks and laypeople alike. Despite his love for poetry and worldly experiences, Tenzin Gyatso did not abandon compassion. Stories tell of him wandering in disguise through villages, listening to people's hardships, offering guidance, and teaching simple meditations to ease suffering. Once, during a particularly harsh winter, he was seen carrying firewood to an elderly widow's home, singing softly to comfort her through the cold night. His reluctance to follow strict monastic rules created tension among the religious authorities. Yet even in controversy, he maintained a presence that inspired devotion. People felt his heart was larger than the confines of monastery walls, embracing a more human and relatable spirituality. Tragically, Tenzin Gyatso's life was short and ended mysteriously. Legends speak of political intrigue and exile, yet his poetry and compassionate acts left a lasting legacy. He became known as the poet Dalai Lama, the incarnation who reminded Tibetans that spiritual greatness can coexist with the natural human experience of love, longing, and joy. His life continues to teach that the Dalai Lama is not only a teacher of scriptures, but a mirror of the human soul, capable of inspiring both reflection and empathy through the beauty of words and deeds. The 7th Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso, 1708–1757. The Tibetan highlands were serene the day Tenzin Gyatso was born. After the turbulence and mysteries surrounding the 6th Dalai Lama, Tibet longed for stability, spiritual guidance, and ethical leadership. From his earliest days, Tenzin Gyatso displayed a calm intelligence, unwavering focus, and a deep sense of compassion. Monks who observed him as a child noted that he possessed a natural authority, not through force, but through his ability to understand and inspire those around him. Recognized as the reincarnation of Tenzin Gyatso, he was enthroned at a young age. From his first lessons, it was clear that he would be both a scholar and a unifier. He spent hours meditating, mastering the scriptures, and learning the intricate debates of Buddhist philosophy. Yet he also demonstrated empathy for ordinary people, often wandering among villages to speak with farmers, children, and pilgrims, listening to their struggles and offering blessings. One notable incident occurred when two powerful monasteries clashed over territory, threatening to erupt into violence. Tenzin Gyatso intervened personally. For days, he met with the leaders, patiently listening to their grievances, guiding discussions with calm reasoning, and performing rituals that symbolized reconciliation. On the final day, he placed his hands over the sacred scriptures and spoke. Wisdom is not claimed through victory, but through harmony. Compassion is the path that binds us all. Moved by his words, the monasteries agreed to peace, and the conflict was resolved without bloodshed. This episode reinforced his reputation as a leader who combined spiritual insight with practical diplomacy. Tenzin Gyatso also emphasized education and spiritual practice. He reformed monastic schools, encouraging both rigorous study of texts and meditation practices. He traveled across Tibet, teaching monks and laypeople alike that ethical conduct, compassion, and wisdom are inseparable. Villagers remembered him kneeling to bless children, helping rebuild homes, and offering food and clothing to those in need. Through his life, Tenzin Gyatso restored stability to Tibet after a period of uncertainty. He demonstrated that the Dalai Lama's role is not only spiritual, but also to foster harmony, ethical governance, and compassion in daily life. His reign became a model of balanced leadership, blending intellect, humility, and service to all beings. The 8th Dalai Lama, Gyamphul Gyatso, 1758–1804. A soft breeze stirred the prayer flags above Lhasa the day Gyamphul Gyatso was born. From the beginning, it was clear he possessed a gentle spirit and a compassionate heart. Unlike some of his predecessors who focused heavily on scholarship, Gyamphul Gyatso's life became a testament to service, humanitarian work, and practical guidance for the people of Tibet. Recognized early as the reincarnation of Tenzin Gyatso, he was enthroned and trained in the sacred traditions of the Gelug school. Even as a young boy, he showed a deep empathy for suffering. Monks recalled how he would spend hours comforting orphans and the sick, often carrying firewood to remote homes during bitter winters. During his reign, Gyamphul Gyatso initiated several reforms aimed at improving daily life for Tibetans. He established schools and hospitals, ensuring that education and healthcare reached remote regions. Villagers remembered how he personally visited mountainous villages during harsh winters to check on the welfare of children and the elderly. One story tells of a severe famine in a high-altitude valley. While officials debated logistics and policies, Gyamphul Gyatso walked for days with a small group of monks, distributing food, blankets, and blessings. He also taught villagers simple meditations to maintain hope and mental calm during desperate times. Those who witnessed his compassion often said he seemed to carry the warmth of the sun with him, even in freezing conditions. In monasteries, he encouraged a balance between study and service. Monks were taught not only scripture and philosophy, but also the importance of helping communities, caring for the sick, and showing humility. Gyamphul Gyatso believed that spiritual knowledge is meaningless without acts of kindness and compassion. Through his efforts, the 8th Dalai Lama brought stability, prosperity, and a renewed sense of moral purpose to Tibet. His life reinforced the enduring lesson of the Dalai Lama lineage. Leadership is not measured by power or authority, but by the capacity to alleviate suffering, foster harmony, and embody compassion in all actions. The 9th Dalai Lama, Lungtok Gyatso, 1805–1815. The hills and valleys of Tibet welcomed a child named Lungtok Gyatso, who would become the 9th Dalai Lama. Born into a time of relative peace, he was recognized at the tender age of 4 as the reincarnation of Gyamphul Gyatso. Despite his youth, those around him sensed a quiet wisdom and serenity that seemed far beyond his years. From early childhood, Lungtok Gyatso displayed extraordinary spiritual insight. Monks observed him sitting for hours in meditation, his small frame radiating calm and presence. One senior monk said, "Though he is only a boy, his mind already flows like the river, clear, steady, and deep." Despite being enthroned so young, Lungtok Gyatso undertook the duties of spiritual leadership with remarkable composure. He learned scripture, performed rituals, and offered guidance to monks and villagers alike. People often visited him seeking blessings, and even in simple daily interactions, his words conveyed a wisdom that touched hearts. One legend tells of a spring flood in a remote village. Villagers feared for their homes and livestock, and the river raged dangerously. Lungtok Gyatso, though barely 10 years old, calmly recited prayers and led the villagers in a meditation ritual. Miraculously, the waters receded and the village was saved. The villagers believed it was the Dalai Lama's serene presence and compassionate energy that had averted disaster. Though his life was tragically short, he passed away at the age of 10. Lungtok Gyatso left an indelible mark on Tibet. He embodied the Dalai Lama principle that spiritual leadership is not measured by age, power, or worldly achievements, but by the depth of compassion, humility, and inner wisdom. Even in his brief life, he inspired a generation of Tibetans to believe that true greatness lies in service to others, the cultivation of virtue, and the steady pursuit of enlightenment, no matter how young or small one might be. The 10th Dalai Lama, Tsultrim Gyatso, 1816-1837. In a quiet Tibetan valley, a child named Tsultrim Gyatso was born into a world still grieving the early passing of the 9th Dalai Lama. Recognized as the reincarnation of Lungtok Gyatso, he was enthroned at a young age, and his presence immediately inspired hope among monks and villagers alike. From the earliest years of his childhood, Tsultrim Gyatso displayed remarkable spiritual focus. Monks observed him meditating for hours, even as a boy, and he showed an intuitive understanding of complex Buddhist teachings. He had a gentle way of speaking that drew others to him, and his eyes reflected a serenity that seemed beyond his years. Though his reign was short, he passed away at the age of 21. Tsultrim Gyatso dedicated himself fully to the spiritual and ethical guidance of Tibet. He traveled to monasteries across the region, offering teachings on compassion, mindfulness, and wisdom. He emphasized that the study of scriptures must always be accompanied by action, helping the poor, comforting the sick, and resolving disputes with patience and understanding. One memorable story tells of a dispute between two villages over grazing lands. Officials could not resolve the conflict, which threatened to escalate into violence. Tsultrim Gyatso personally visited both villages, listening to the grievances of elders and children alike. Sitting beneath an ancient pine, he calmly spoke. True ownership lies not in land alone, but in harmony of hearts. If you respect each other, the earth itself will provide for all. His words, combined with his presence, diffused the tension, and the villages came to a peaceful agreement. This demonstrated his deep belief that spiritual authority is rooted in wisdom, compassion, and moral guidance rather than force or coercion. Tsultrim Gyatso's life, though brief, reaffirmed the core values of the Dalai Lama lineage: service to humanity, ethical leadership, and the inseparable connection between spiritual wisdom and practical action. His teachings continued to inspire monks, nobles, and villagers, leaving a legacy that transcended the limitations of his years. The 11th Dalai Lama, Gedun Gyatso, 1830-1856. The Tibetan plateau was bathed in the soft glow of dawn when Gedun Gyatso was born. From his earliest days, those around him sensed a quiet depth in the child. Monks visiting his home whispered that he carried the same gentle wisdom and spiritual light as his predecessors. Recognized as the reincarnation of Tsultrim Gyatso, Gedun Gyatso was enthroned at a young age and began his training in the sacred arts of the Gelug tradition. Even as a child, he showed remarkable intelligence and compassion. While other children played, Gedun Gyatso would often visit the sick or sit quietly with villagers, offering words of comfort or simple blessings. One elder recalled, though he was small, his presence could calm the heart. You felt as if you were speaking to someone far older and wiser. Gedun Gyatso's reign coincided with challenges for Tibet, yet he remained focused on spiritual matters. He devoted himself to meditation, scripture study, and guiding monks, emphasizing that true leadership flows from wisdom, humility, and compassion. One famous story tells of a bitter winter when a heavy snowfall trapped villagers in the mountains. Gedun Gyatso, despite his youth, personally led relief efforts. He traveled for miles through treacherous paths, offering food, blankets, and prayers. Villagers later recounted that his calm presence and gentle words eased their fear, and they credited him with saving lives through both action and spiritual guidance. Though his life was tragically short, he passed away at just 18. Gedun Gyatso's legacy was profound. He reminded Tibetans that even a brief life lived in service, meditation, and kindness could leave an enduring impact. His life reinforced the Dalai Lama lineage's core principle, that spiritual authority is inseparable from compassion, humility, and dedication to the well-being of others. The 12th Dalai Lama, Trinley Gyatso, 1857-1875. In a remote Tibetan valley, a child named Trinley Gyatso was born. From the very beginning, villagers and monks sensed that he carried a calm and wise spirit, one that seemed unusually attuned to the suffering of others. Soon after his birth, he was recognized as the reincarnation of Gedun Gyatso, the 11th Dalai Lama, and preparations began for his enthronement and training in the sacred Gelug tradition. From an early age, Trinley Gyatso displayed remarkable empathy. While other children played, he would walk among the villagers, listening to their troubles, comforting the sick, and offering simple blessings. One day, he found a child shivering in the cold outside a small home. Without hesitation, he wrapped the child in his own cloak, murmuring prayers for warmth and protection. Villagers marveled at how such a young boy could radiate such compassion. Tenzin Gyatso also took his spiritual studies seriously. He memorized scriptures, practiced meditation for hours, and learned the intricate rituals of the Gelug tradition. Yet he balanced scholarship with action. He encouraged monks to engage with the communities, to serve the needy, and to teach mindfulness and ethical living, believing that spiritual wisdom must always be expressed through compassionate deeds. One of the most remembered incidents of his short life occurred during a harsh winter famine. Tenzin Gyatso personally traveled across snow-covered passes to deliver food and blankets to villages cut off by the storm. Even in dangerous conditions, he maintained a serene composure, offering comfort and reassurance to frightened families. His courage, humility, and dedication inspired everyone who encountered him, from monks to common villagers. Though Tenzin Gyatso passed away at the young age of 18, his life embodied the enduring principles of the Dalai Lama lineage: service to humanity, spiritual dedication, and the inseparable connection between wisdom and compassion. Even in his brief years, he left a legacy that continued to guide Tibetans and the monastic community, demonstrating that a heart devoted to others can achieve greatness beyond its years. The 13th Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso, 1876–1933. The high mountains of Tibet were cloaked in early morning mist when Tenzin Gyatso was born. From the first days of his life, those around him sensed a presence of calm strength and spiritual depth. Recognized as the reincarnation of Tenzin Gyatso, the 12th Dalai Lama, he was enthroned at a young age and began his rigorous training in the Gelug tradition. From childhood, Tenzin Gyatso showed extraordinary intelligence, determination, and an intuitive understanding of the world. Unlike some of his predecessors, he would also think critically about the governance of Tibet, aware that spiritual leadership was deeply connected to the welfare of the people. He studied philosophy, meditation, ethics, and also developed an understanding of political and social matters, a preparation for the unique challenges he would face. During his early reign, Tibet faced threats from foreign powers and internal instability. Tenzin Gyatso recognized that to preserve Tibet's independence and culture, he had to act decisively. One legendary story tells of him rallying support after an invasion, calmly inspiring both monks and soldiers with his presence. "Courage," he said, "is not in the sword, but in protecting our land and our people with wisdom and compassion." Beyond politics, Tenzin Gyatso emphasized education and modernization. He reformed monasteries, encouraged the study of medicine, history, and languages, and promoted welfare for the common people. He also traveled extensively within Tibet, inspecting villages, meeting elders, and listening to the needs of ordinary citizens. One memorable incident describes a harsh winter when a flood threatened Lhasa. Tenzin Gyatso personally coordinated relief efforts, distributing food, blankets, and firewood while offering blessings and prayers. People recalled his calm voice and steady presence, which inspired confidence even in moments of fear. His reign also strengthened Tibet's spiritual authority internationally. Tenzin Gyatso maintained relations with India, Mongolia, and other regions, ensuring that Tibetan Buddhism remained respected worldwide. He skillfully balanced spiritual leadership with political responsibility, setting a precedent for the modern Dalai Lamas. By the time of his passing in 1933, Tenzin Gyatso had transformed the Dalai Lama's role into one that embraced both spiritual guidance and worldly leadership. He demonstrated that true authority arises not from power or fear, but from wisdom, compassion, and courage in service to others. The 14th Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso, 1935–present. On a cold February morning in the remote village of Taksar in northeastern Tibet, a boy named Lama Dondub was born. His family were simple farmers, living a life shaped by the mountains, rivers, and vast Tibetan skies. From the beginning, there was something extraordinary about him. He was unusually calm, observant, and seemed to carry an inner peace that belied his years. Villagers remarked, "This child looks as if he has lived many lives before." At the age of 2, after a meticulous search guided by monks and oracles, he was recognized as the reincarnation of the 13th Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso. Young Lama Dondub was enthroned and given the name Tenzin Gyatso, beginning his rigorous training in Buddhist philosophy, ritual, meditation, and ethics. Even as a child, Tenzin Gyatso displayed prodigious memory, deep compassion, and an uncanny ability to connect with others. By the time he was a teenager, Tenzin Gyatso had mastered vast amounts of scripture, memorized prayers, and excelled in debates with senior monks. But his spiritual journey was intertwined with the turbulent history of Tibet. In 1950, at the age of 15, he faced the sudden reality of political upheaval. The Chinese army entered Tibet, marking the beginning of a conflict that would change his life and the fate of his people forever. Despite these immense challenges, Tenzin Gyatso remained committed to the welfare of Tibetans. In 1959, following a failed uprising against Chinese rule, he fled to India, beginning a life in exile that would make him a global symbol of compassion, peace, and resilience. Settling in Dharamshala, he established a Tibetan government in exile and tirelessly worked to preserve Tibetan culture, religion, and identity. Beyond politics, Tenzin Gyatso became an international teacher. Traveling the world, he spoke about compassion, nonviolence, mindfulness, and interfaith harmony. Crowds were often moved not by rhetoric but by his serene presence, warmth, and humor. He stressed that happiness comes not from material wealth but from inner peace and service to others. One defining moment occurred during his travels to conflict zones. Even in the face of danger, he calmly met with leaders, refugees, and ordinary people, reminding them that understanding and empathy are stronger than weapons. His teachings emphasized universal responsibility, urging humans to care for each other and the planet. Tenzin Gyatso also embraced modern science and education. He met with neuroscientists to study the mind, promoted environmental awareness, and encouraged dialogue between modern knowledge and ancient wisdom. Yet he remained deeply rooted in Tibetan Buddhist traditions, combining meditation, ethics, and study with a practical, contemporary approach to life. Throughout his life, he has received numerous awards, including the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989, but he consistently emphasized that recognition is secondary to the duty of helping others. He continues to teach that the true measure of a life is compassion, humility, and the effort to reduce suffering in the world. Today, Tenzin Gyatso, the 14th Dalai Lama, is not just a spiritual leader of Tibetans. He is a global teacher inspiring millions to cultivate peace, mindfulness, and ethical living. His life exemplifies the culmination of the Dalai Lama lineage. Wisdom born of reincarnation, compassion expressed through action, and leadership grounded in humility and service. From the serene mountains of Tibet to the vast landscapes of the human heart, the lineage of the Dalai Lamas tells a story of wisdom, compassion, and tireless service. Each reincarnation, whether a child wandering through valleys, a scholar in distant monasteries, or a global leader like Tenzin Gyatso, has shown that true greatness is measured not by power, but by the courage to serve, the humility to listen, and the love to heal. Through centuries of challenges, joys, and transformations, the Dalai Lamas have remained a guiding light, teaching that the path to enlightenment is inseparable from acts of kindness, understanding, and peace. Their lives remind us that no matter the era, the soul's purpose endures, to awaken, to serve, and to illuminate the world with compassion.